Okay, acolytes. This one sounds funny. Are Jews the cause of DI in big tech? I wouldn't say it's the cause of a certain race, no matter what. It's the people that caused it are just very stupid people. Are very, well, people who F up a lot of things. Not specifically, well, a race of people. So, let's just see what he has to say about it. And I read it's funny, Acolyte. So, if an Acolyte sent me, if this isn't funny for F's sake, man, I'm gonna put you in the soldier. Capiche? For a freaking year.
Are Jewish people, are Jews, the cause of diversity, equity, and inclusion within big tech and the tech industry? I know this may seem like a crazy question to ask, and a crazy question to ask on a tech news outlet. But you see this theory propped up fairly regularly by certain segments of fringe political groups, and it gets repeated so often that I think it's worth looking at from a purely factual, analytical level, right? Putting aside personal feelings about any particular groups, putting aside political leanings, religious thoughts, anything. Just, is there any sort of truth, potentially or factually, about Jews being the cause of DEI and woke policies in big tech?
I like his thinking already. The thing is, I do not care what happens when it happens, or I do care. You know what I mean, Acolytes. I do not care what happens, I just care about the facts behind it. If it is what it is, as he says, if there are actual, correct, and truthful situations that actually prove the thing, then you can believe it. But you have to look for them. And I love that he actually goes in, knees in, and does it.
I posted my thoughts on this and over on X. I'm gonna read some of it to you now. And I have some additional thoughts I'd like to add as well. Stick with me, because I think it's worth getting this information out there. Here we go. I see many people who are convinced that Jews caused DEI in tech and gaming. So I decided to sit down and take another look at it. Could I be wrong? Could Jews truly be the driving force behind DEI within the tech industry? So I looked over all of the biggest DEI and woke policy stories within tech over the last few years. Now, luckily, I covered most of them. I mean, when we're talking about these sorts of stories, the Lunduk Journal is the premium primary outlet for most of the DEI and woke stories within the tech industry, right? No one covers this stuff as much as I do. No one. That's not, I mean, if you, that is unabashed, unequivocal. That is the case. And luckily, I still have all my notes and all my coverage to go back over. So I did. I started looking over all of them. I started looking over all of the big stories, who the primary players were within those stories, who the leadership was within those stories, at those companies, foundations, and organizations, and started looking into, are they Jews or not? Let's start there, right? So here we go.
Fair enough.
The leadership of Mozilla, who pushed DEI in an absolutely crazy way. I mean, the number of DEI and woke stories coming out of Mozilla, where they literally rebranded themselves as Marxist and DEI activists.
Already. Not my favorite people. Let's just say it as nice as I can.
None of them were Jewish. Not the executives, not the management, nor the low-level employees. Nada. There's no people that are Jews there. It's not happening. How about Adobe? Now, Adobe was heavily pushing DEI, right? The Photoshop company was like, DEI is king, until just a few weeks ago, really. They just recently changed away from some of those policies. Well, let's look at the people.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know that. But good to know.
who were involved in those policies when they were implemented, who kept those DEI policies going, and then who is involved now? No Jews. No Jews in the entire leadership chain pushing DEI at Adobe. Not one. Okay, let's keep going. How about Red Hat and IBM? Holy heavens. The number of DEI stories coming out of Red Hat and IBM, the lawsuits, the whistleblower leaks, the anti-white training. I mean, talk about your...
What the... And those people are actually saying that they aren't freaking racist. What the fuck, man? Acolytes. Okay.
Poster child for DEI. And we're talking about Red Hat and IBM. Huge corporations, highly bureaucratic. If there was an opportunity for at least a couple of Jews to be found somewhere in that management chain promoting the DEI, we're going to find it at Red Hat and IBM, somewhere in there. I have the names and positions of almost every person involved in DEI at both Red Hat and IBM, thanks to the massive amount of coverage I've done of this, through the lawsuits, the huge number of whistleblower leaks. I mean, if you go to Lunduk.com, if you go to the Lunduk Journal, and you haven't followed it up till now, I've got an entire page dedicated to the chronological order of all the leaks, all the whistleblowers, all the lawsuit updates from IBM and Red Hat. I've got it all. From training individuals, people low level creating training materials, to their managers, to the executives, and all the way up to the board of directors of the individuals who've been pushing the DEI stuff. Guess how many Jews there were? Zero. I'm not saying there weren't a lot of Jews. I'm saying there were none. In that chain of actually pushing the DEI, of actually making it happen, not one Jew. None. Okay, let's go to Microsoft.
Fair enough.
Microsoft's been doing some crazy woke policy stuff, promoting gender changes of 3-year-olds, encouraging,
disgusting. What the As expected.
Hiring people who are not white. Crazy DEI stuff happening at Microsoft. Hugely discriminatory, highly perverted, off the charts stuff. So how about their Microsoft DEI teams and leadership? The executives in the DEI and human relations line at Microsoft that have been promoting these things, same thing there. Not one Jew. Now, I'm not saying, again, that there's not very many Jews. There's not a whole lot of Jews. There's weirdly no Jews. In fact, it should be actually off-putting how few Jews there are involved in any of this stuff. It's overwhelming. Okay, fine. This is like this throughout the tech. We could go through numerous examples. And in fact, if you go look at, because all this information is out there, if you go look at the past coverage of the Lunduk Journal over the last 2 years of all of the major companies that I've been talking about relating to DEI, and you start plugging in their names, you're going to start noticing, again, no Jews, over and over and over again. Okay, fine. So let's zoom out a bit. Right? Let's say, okay, so we know that the lowest level people, the mid-level management, the executives, all the way up through the board, no Jews promoting DEI in any of these big tech companies. Okay.
Fair enough.
That seems definitive, but let's zoom out. What if we look at the venture capitalists that have invested in some of the more DEI heavy tech firms? Because that's a thing. That's a thing that gets brought up is, oh, well, maybe it's not, people that are doing it are Jewish. People, none of the people promoting DEI are Jewish, but the financiers, they've got to be all Jewish, right? Let's find out. This information's easy to figure out, so let's find out.
It's at some point, it's just so absurd, for F's sake. It's no, they have to be. No, those are Jews. No, those are. This is. Oh,
which What if we look at the venture capitalists which have invested in some of the more DEI heavy tech firms? Of the top 5 DEI focused venture capital firms, I can only find one person at one firm who might be Jewish, simply because I cannot find details on this particular person, whether they're Jewish or not, but the name is possibly Jewish or just German. It's kind of hard. It could go either way. Not confirmed.
Okay,
one person at one firm might be Jewish, and the rest definitely not. Now, here's the thing. I know personally a lot of the people involved at the venture capitalist firms that I'm talking about here. I've been in this industry a long time. I've been doing this work for a long time. I know these people. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are very much not. But I know them. Not Jews. Not Jews at all. Not Jew adjacent. Okay. So let's zoom out, right? So clearly not venture capitalist investors either. How about the shareholders? Oh, right. Now, many who believe that Jews are the cause of DEI in big tech, they will point to the large investment firms as being Jewish, and therefore these companies must listen to what the investment firms say. Therefore, if the companies are doing DEI stuff, it's because the Jewish investors are telling them to do it. That's the theory. Well, it turns out that those companies, those investment firms in the big tech companies, are highly mixed. Several of the largest firms are based in Arab states and have distinctly Islamic leadership. Distinctly religiously Islamic leadership, oftentimes closely connected to the royal families and leadership of the country, the Islamic nations that they're in. Okay. Some of these companies are US and EU based with a wide mix of leadership, predominantly Christian. Not anything else, predominantly Christian. Now, there are a few executives at a small number of the investment firms which are Jewish, but those are the minority, smaller, way smaller than the Islamic and Christian representation in such firms. By a long shot, hugely smaller. And this is really important to note, because in order for the theory that these companies are doing what the investment firms tell them to do, there needs to be heavy control by Jews of the investment firms to a large enough degree that the companies are beholden to the investors. And that simply is not the case, to a ridiculous degree. In fact, there is a far stronger correlation, a far stronger reason to believe that these companies would be more beholden to the whims of the Islamic investment firms than any investment firm that employs Jews in their executive level.
This analytic thing, it sounds stupid, but it's actually quite fun. I'm gonna be honest, this is highly interesting. I love it.
That's just the case. And again, far more Christian leadership at these investment firms and controlling a far larger amount of that investment pie. So what do we know? The low-level DEI-focused employees, their management, the executives, even the majority of DEI-heavy funding is not Jewish. Now, pivoting back to look at open source, right? It gets even less Jewish. It's not that already is about as un-Jewish as you can get. It gets way less Jewish. The leadership of the most extremely woke pro-DEI projects within the world of open source and free software are not only not Jewish, but decidedly anti-Jewish, often banning Jews and declaring their opposition to the existence of the state of Israel. And if you'd like details on all of what I've just said, You can simply look to the extensive coverage from the Lunduk Journal. Anyone who's like, oh, Lunduk's not providing details, I've been providing it for years. Go look at the coverage from the Lunduk Journal. Huge, hundreds and hundreds of shows and articles and published charts and details going through all of this. And it's all publicly available and highly, highly, highly detailed. You want examples of people within the open source industry, the highly woke, highly DEI thumping people who are just basically going on rampages about the evils of Jews? Yeah, I've covered a lot of that. So that brings us to tech journalism in general. I'm going to ask a simple question here. How many publicly, proudly observant Jews are you aware of within tech journalism? Think about this for a minute. Not anything, just focus on big tech, tech journalism, open source journalism, tech journalism. How many public, proud, observant Jews do you know who are really active in tech journalism? I know of one.
Hey, it's one more than none. So there you have it. Everyone is in it. Everyone. Every single one of them. The entire one guy, yes. You can see how obvious this is. What the fuck? This is just freaking absurd. I'm gonna be honest here. I don't know how the fuck somebody could come to this conclusion, but hey.
This guy, right? I know of just one. Now, all those big tech companies, those foundations, those investment firms and open source projects that love DEI, and there's a lot of them, they really, really, really hate the one lone Jewish tech journalist. They ban him. They ban the Jew from even being talked to. They go on smear campaigns against the Jew.
What the
And those orders come from everyone from the bottom all the way to the top, from the board on down, the investment firms, the boards, the executive leadership, the mid-level management, the bottom level trenches, the whole chain within tech, big tech, tech foundations, all of it. They are very much don't like the Jew, the one Jew. So what group is most represented, right? Because it's clearly not Jews, not at all. In fact, not only is there not evidence to even suggest that Jews are the cause of DEI within big tech, but there's a really good reason to believe that Jews are one of the primary targets of the people promoting DEI and wokeness within big tech. Holy heavens.
Unholy heavens.
What group is most represented among the DEI pushing parts of the tech and game industry? I mean, this is, if it's not Jews, who is it, right? Okay, let's look at that. Let's be reasonable about that. Well, the obvious answer is that there's a political component to all this, right? The people promoting DEI and wokeness within the big tech industry tend to be very left-leaning politically, but that's an obvious one. We can easily all just common sense that one. But what are the other demographics? And it's all over the map otherwise. All over the map. There are lots of straight white guys. There just are. A lot of straight white dudes all throughout this. There's lots of women. White, black, and Indian especially. Those tend to be the most represented in the DEI chain of power within these corporations and projects. White, black, and Indian women. And I'm not attacking anyone here. I'm just saying it's mixed, but this is what you see a lot of. Lots of people, and I mean a lot of people who identify as trans, right? So a lot of guys who identify as ladies, a lot of ladies who identify as guys, and a lot of ladies who identify as non-binary. Not a lot of guys who identify as non-binary. If you're really just being honest about it, it's not the trans people within big tech and the tech industry and whatnot, it doesn't make up a majority at all of the people promoting DEI, but it's a larger percentage, a much larger percentage than, say, trans people within society in general, right? From the religious standpoint, if we're really going to look at this, because if we're going to say, oh, Jews are the cause of DEI, okay, well, let's look at the other religions too. A fair number of people who are Christian and Hindi. It's worth noting, Christian and Hindi make up a pretty noteworthy chunk of people promoting DEI. But, and this is really, really, I think the biggest chunk, it's mostly atheists or people who are a little more agnostic. But I should caution this because that's as far as we can know. For a lot of people within these positions, they haven't talked publicly in any way about their faith. But through a combination of looking at what holidays they observe, their names, they look like a little bit. I mean, just, pulling together a lot of just common sense things, you can suss out that not a lot of Jews, but a lot of atheists. And luckily, a lot of people who are proudly atheists, which allows us to say, oh, okay, well, they've come out and said they're atheists or they don't believe in any particular religion. They make that statement. Okay, now we know. But there's still a lot of people we can't really pin down on any one particular faith. It seems like there's a pretty good, healthy chunk of them that are agnostic or most likely agnostic. But, and again, this is a really important bit. Not a lot of Jews. In fact, again, as you go through most of the companies, you find none at all anything to do with DEI. Top to bottom, all the way up to all the way down, the financing, the VC, the board, the executives, the whole works, right? Not a lot of Jews. So I would say the theory that Jews cause DEI in big tech is blown out of the water. It doesn't hold any weight whatsoever. But I put this up on X, and boy, did a lot of people disagree with me. But before I address some of those, I also heard from quite a few people who had similar experiences. This one guy came out and says, as a Jew in tech and with a good few years of FANG experience, there was a lot of DEI, and I've never met a Jew that was involved with it except for on the receiving end of the stick. And I just want to say, and this is what I replied to him on this one, but it's true. As a general rule, you simply do not find Jews pushing DEI in tech organizations, but you do find DEI and woke people in tech orgs trying to keep out Jews. And a lot of you are like, oh, this
is, I mean, the old thing, all Jews are bad, seemingly still works. Because at the end of the day, it's just those effing people are so effing racist against certain, basically racist. It's insane. And I do not get how the F they can think they are anything. And I mean anything but fucked up in their head. But hey, delusion goes far, I guess. It's just insane.
It's nonsense, Landu. No, hear me out. Many of you will recall a large enterprise tech company I used to work for. I was in marketing for them. Inside that firm, I was told specifically to heavily promote Christian and Muslim holidays. And that included parties, marketing materials, signage, holiday greeting cards, songs and jingles, poems with little graphics on them. Muslim and Christian holidays were heavily pushed. We got to promote both of them within the company and outwardly. And I was specifically forbidden from even mentioning the existence of Jewish holidays. And I want to think about that for a second. Within a big tech company, I was told, as one of the few Jews within the company, to work on holidays for Christian and Muslim holidays, which honestly I enjoyed doing. That was a lot of fun. I put together some really fun stuff for them because I like holidays, whether they're mine or not, right? It was great. So I worked on those. But
by the way, who doesn't like holidays? Holidays are nice. I love holidays.
Made the mistake one time of mentioning briefly the existence of Hanukkah. The armies descended from on high about how horrible it was that I would mention the existence of Hanukkah. It's not a secret. Who cares about Hanukkah? It's not even the biggest Jewish holiday, right? So I brought up within the company how bizarre that was. When I brought this up, the executive team became enraged. It was crazy. There was an investigation. It was nuts. They were mad at me, right? Now, that company who was very upset that naughty Jew would mouth off and say something pro-Jew, really, and was really advocating for any holiday but Jewish holidays. That same company continues back then and today to love DEI stuff and woke stuff. And they really didn't like the Jews. And I'll let you suss out what company that is. I've talked about it in the past. But then I put this all out there. And a whole bunch of people responded, just indignant. Lanjuk. So upset.
Why? You cannot say this. That's racist. Oh yeah, we hate all of you. That's racist.
Responded, I don't think Jews in big tech tend to be discriminated against. The vast majority of the leaders of big tech are Jews. I'm not saying DEI is Jewish. I said you didn't. But what he's saying here is the vast majority of leaders of big tech are Jews. Here's the thing. We can verify that. Let's look that up, right? So let's look at companies like Adobe, Microsoft, IBM, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, on and on and on. The company I just talked about before with that story about not liking Jewish holidays, on and on and on. No Jewish CEOs. Not one. And we're talking just a quick off the top of my head list of some of the biggest tech companies in all the land, no Jewish CEOs. Are there Jewish executives in tech? Yeah, but not very many. Not actually. Not when you actually sit down and think about facts. Because Adobe, no. Microsoft, no. IBM, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, no. No Jews. No ethnic Jews. No religious Jews. Nobody who identifies as a Jew. Nobody who thinks about Jewish stuff. Nobody who reads the Torah scrolls. None of it. None of it at all. So the idea that the vast majority of leaders in big tech are Jewish is wrong.
Absurd.
It's just incorrect. I mean, you can say it as much as you want, but it's still a easily provably incorrect thing. And this is I've been noticing this over and over again as a pattern with people who believe in the Jews are the cause of DEI in big tech, people who promote this idea. They just don't take 2 seconds to look into things because that was an easy one to.
Yeah, if you actually want to look into this is just something that a lot of people will skip because of pure laziness. Let's be honest here, acolytes. This isn't any big secret here. It's purely because it's laziness. I do not think there is anything to say except, yeah, people are lazy, they want to do it. At least that's what I think.
To figure out that was just not true. This other person, and every time I posted all of this information, the goalpost kept moving, right? So at first it was, oh man, Jews control big tech and Jews run DEI within big tech, and it's all because of the Jews. They're making it happen. And as I was disproving that with just lists of the CEOs and everything else, the goalposts kept moving. And so this person responded, obviously, you're not going to find a Goldberg or a Goldstein rubbing his hand in the boardroom pushing DEI. But where did the DEI ideology come from? Okay. So we're now even the people who were like, oh, those Jews in big tech, they now have to agree. Once you actually look at facts, there's no there. So I responded with this. Okay, so it's true. Jews are not responsible for DEI or woke policies in tech, but there might have been a person a long time ago who had some Jewish family members, and that person might have had an opinion.
Oh my F. At that point, they are just stretching so wide that it's not even realistic. Like, come on. If you're at that point and your argument just doesn't stand a little shit, just accept it. Honestly, for F's sake. If you lost the argument, you lost the argument. It's not the end of the world. It happens. It's fine. Nobody is always correct about everything. Just go in you, accept it, and move on. It's fine.
Which was similar to DEI, right? That's basically the argument at this point. And really, that's like playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? Like, oh, I knew a guy who went to school with a guy who dated a girl whose cousin once was working craft services on a Kevin Bacon movie, right? Right. That's the sort of thing we're playing here.
Yeah.
And it's for someone who may be Jewish who thought a thing once. That's what that's the remains of this argument once you start to pick it apart. Another person responded, I don't think this is definitive. You need to find out where it does come from rather than just giving some anecdotal examples. Who the management are in some tech corporations doesn't give you an answer. They're not self-selected and ultimately not in charge of those policies. So here's me paraphrasing that one. Quote, okay, so there are no Jews in big tech pushing DEI. There's just none. And Jews in big tech tend to be discriminated against. But the non-Jews who are pushing DEI and discriminating against Jews were put there by a magical Jewish force that nobody can see, end quote. That's how I perceive this. And it's just, there's just so much not logicalness to the entire argument here. It's just truly illogical. And now
it doesn't have any logic behind it. This is just a feeling from people that are racist against a certain group and that just want it to be true. They just want everything that they see, that they know, to be instantly true because they cannot fathom the fact that they are in fact fallible human beings. Yes, you won't get everything correct. Boo, habadi boo, who? It happens. And by the way, that's fine. It's honestly not that bad. You can accept it, move on, and be happy. But for that, you actually have to accept that you are fallible. To some degree. And then just, well, be okay with it. Simple as that. Just be okay with it.
About as opposed to the DEI policies in big tech as you can get. If I see a commonality of the people who are promoting it, I'm going to point to it. Whatever it is, because it's not good. I'm opposed to the racist DEI policies and the clearly harmful woke policies within these companies. They're destroying big tech and open source and everything else, regardless of where they come from. But the reality is, as you really start to pick it apart And as you start to look at it, there are ideology consistencies with those people, right? They do tend to more heavily promote some Marxist policies, Marxist styles and ideals. A great example there is Mozilla, who proudly promotes Marxism at their events and talks about it from that point of view. And so you see very leftish political leanings throughout the vast majority of the people pushing the DEI stuff. But the reality is there's no one group that you can point to. It's not like the DEI is being pushed by this homogenous blob of Christians or Hindus. It's not happening. Or even atheists. And there are a lot of atheists pushing it, but there are so many Christians and Hindus also pushing it that you really can't say it's a religious thing. You really can't point to a religion and say, even atheism, which, I mean, it's the largest collection religiously of people pushing the DEI stuff in big tech. But even...
Wait. Did I understand him correctly?
It's not happening. Or even atheists. And there are a lot of atheists pushing it, but there are so many Christians and Hindus also pushing it that you really can't say it's a religious thing. You really can't point to a religion and say, even atheism, which, I mean, it's the largest collection religiously of people pushing the DEI.
It's the largest collection of people religiously... I mean, if I understood him correctly, he didn't mean that atheism is a religion, but they behave like they are pushing it religiously. Did I understand this one correct? If this is correct, and he said it as I understood, or as I think he meant it, that they behave religiously, yes, I agree with him. If he says this is a religion, I disagree with him because atheism isn't a religion. Simple as that. Fair enough.
DEI stuff in big tech, but even that you can't say that's really a definitive thing. The same is true for gender demographics. Men and women, both heavily. Men and women. A lot more white guys than white women in leadership positions. In lower level positions, you find a lot of both white guys and white women. But throughout even leadership positions, you find, Black and Indian women, a whole lot of them. It's all over the map. And there's not really one group that you can point to. It's an ideology, right? It's a set of ideologies. You can point to them as being politically leftist. Mm-hmm. But this is the key here. It's not Jews. It doesn't matter how much certain random groups just desire for the Jews to be responsible for DEI. To hold that idea after seeing all of this and looking back over the Lunduk Journal coverage over the last 2 years of some of the biggest DEI related policy news stories throughout all of big tech, if you still hold the idea that Jews are somehow responsible, you're retarded.
He's correct. Yes. As I said, I don't think there is a certain group doing this. There are just extremely stupid human beings doing this. Human beings. There isn't a specific group for this.
And I don't mean to just start dogging on a person, but come on. Like, there's no facts at all that support that. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes far, almost infinitely more sense that that white Christian males are specifically responsible for DEI within big tech. Far more sense. And even that makes no sense. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you go through these companies, there's no Jews, but there are white Christian guys. Does it seem like white Christian guys are doing it? I want to be very clear about this. No, obviously not. But there's more evidence, however stretched it would have to be in order to make it true, that white Christian guys are involved. That's just the truth. truth is important. When we sit down to cover any sort of story, the truth is critical. Not my feelings, not my lived experiences, not my truth. No. Truth, facts. What can I put into this spreadsheet based on real verifiable data that I can point to? Facts. That's what's important here. Now, if we come up with an opinion or an ideology or an entire or attribute motivation to a people that is not supported by facts, and in fact the facts disprove that completely, but we hold firm to those crazy opinions that are based on just made up nonsense, we're retarded. We're
Yes, he's correct about it. I actually agree with him. Just accept that you're fallible. It's fine. You can move on afterwards and be better. It's totally fine. You can be fallible, acolytes. As long as you serve me, I don't care. I will accept you as you are.
Stupid people if we do that, right? So here's what I'm gonna ask to folks. If you've had the idea that Jews were the cause of DEI and big tech, reevaluate that, because there's no data that supports that. And there's a tremendous, psychotically huge amount of data that says there's no chance that that's actually happening. Remember, once again, there's one observant, out and proud Jew in the tech industry working in tech journalism that every DEI company hates.
Yep.
Bear that in mind. I want to thank all of the Lunduk Journal subscribers for making it possible for me to do this sort of coverage. It's important to talk about these things because they impact the whole of the tech industry, from open source and open source projects through to the foundations, the big tech companies, and everything.
I agree with him. It is highly important to actually talk about this. Because remember, your enemies don't want you to get information in any kind of way or spread your information. And especially I don't thingy-bobs that cannot stand with logic alone. They don't want your thing to be spread. And I mean, it makes sense because, well, if my idea was total bollocks, I couldn't argue for it now, could I? But if you're actually think about the things you're doing, you're thinking about the things you actually want to do, and you think about the conclusion you could go or get afterwards, you'll find out that, yeah, it's better to do it that way.
Everything in between. They impact the people that work in the tech industry, what it's like working in it, and ultimately the products that are built, the computers, the hardware, the software. All of it is impacted when entire organizations veer away from meritocracy. That has a negative impact on the software that we build. That has a negative impact on what it's like to work as a computer programmer, as a software engineer, as an electrical engineer within these corporations. And so it needs to be talked about. And you know what? Most of you watching this are like, yeah, Lunduk, we know. Jews obviously were not the cause of DEI and big tech. That's kind of been obvious for the whole time as we've been listening to you, the Jewish guy, talk about all the awfulness in DEI and big tech. We kind of got it. But I want to put this needed to be out there anyway, because we need to set the record straight. When people are out there spouting the same nonsense nonstop, eventually that nonsense, right, the things that are provably false get accepted as true.
Yes, true.
And then fighting them becomes even harder. I've talked about this with computer myths a great deal. It's like the myth of the first computer bug being an actual moth. Is that true? No. But it got repeated so many times that that's now in history books. It's in textbooks.
What? No. No. Really? No, he's shitting. No. What the fuck?
People who call themselves computer historians cite that story of a moth being the actual first computer bug. It's crazy. It's not a real thing, but people cite it. People cite the quote from Bill Gates where he said 640K ought to be enough for anybody. He didn't actually say it. He didn't actually say it. I mean, later on, he said it when he was trying to tell people he never said it. But the thing people quote him when they say it was a thing that never even existed. He never said it. I've studied this one in depth, but it's been said so many times that it's a fun joke to say. I've repeated the joke, but it's not real. But those same falsehoods get repeated over and over and over again until they become a myth. They become a legend, and then eventually they just become reality. That's now the truth. And this particular thing that is being repeated over and over and over again in some very strange corners of the internet especially is not exactly a lighthearted one. It's not a jokey thing like the moth being the first bug. We're talking about vilifying and ostracizing an entire group of people for something that they have no involvement in whatsoever. And so it needs to be corrected. And it needs to be corrected, and
yeah, fair enough, by the way.
No one else was doing it. So now I will, and now the comments section of wherever I post this will get flooded with people who are like, oh, but there was this one Jewish guy one time 375 bazillion years ago, and he thought, you know what, hey, diversity, and so therefore the CEO of Adobe who is not Jewish, implements DEI policies. Like, somehow that happens. It's the most underpants know me thing ever. Just illogical. But thank you to the Lunduk Journal subscribers for allowing me to do this sort of thing. It's important. Go to lunduk.com where you can subscribe. You can find lots and lots of different ways.
Damn, this is he's so on effing point. People will just believe the things they want to believe for absolutely no reason. Just because they want it to be true. And I mean, it's understandable to a certain degree. As I said, acolytes, it's human beings, it's undeaf, it is what it is. People want to be correct. People actually don't want to actively spread misinformation about something. But also their ego is just hindering them of actually accepting that they could be wrong in any kind of way. And that's a bit of a fucked up part, isn't it? It's just literally, as this proves, people would rather be full-on freaking racist, go in, pretend that they are correct just to protect their ego. And that's crazy to me. To me, that's just something that my mind gets blown every day, acolytes. It's just, why? Why wouldn't you just accept that you are fallible? It's fine. Everybody is. Everybody is. It's nothing special, to be quite frank. It's just something that happens. But as it is, acolytes, good night.